Welcome, everyone. This is Robin Duncan, and this is our Course in Miracles Church service. Today, our topic is darkness to light. Let's go ahead and start with an opening prayer. Take in a long, deep, relaxing breath, turning inward to where every answer is. Dear God, as we join together, we are listening for only your voice. We are thinking your thoughts. There is no other voice we wish to hear. For anyone among us that has a big challenge going on, we are willing to accept that we don't know our way through it. And we are going to lay down all of our thoughts and ideas and make room for you. That you would guide us with certainty to the highest and most peaceful answer, according to your will. May your will be done. Amen. It's great to see you all today. You know, I think at the top of your notes there, I didn't put in the little miracle story, but I do want to share one. I think I will call it Making Room for God, because there was a time when everything was falling apart. I know, hard to imagine, right? Don't I look like I have it all together? But sometimes I didn't. So everything was falling apart. It was not too long after 9/11. And at the time, I was a recruiter for restaurant managers because I really had a lot of my training and experience in the restaurant industry. And that was a great experience for a couple of years. I was able to work at home, and it was good money. And I was able to be there with my kids after going through a really tough divorce. So it was really great to be able to work at home and be with them. But then 9/11 happened. And what I did not expect is that when people are afraid, they don't tend to want to move around very much. They kind of freeze. So no one was looking for a new job. No one wanted to hire new people. People weren't even going to restaurants because they were scared, you know? And so all of a sudden, there was nothing going on. And at the time, I had my two boys and I had two foster daughters. I was recently divorced, and it was just a really scary time. And I didn't know what to do. I could go back to my old job type situation, you know, a CFO, CPA. You can always find some kind of work, you know, not necessarily at the salary that you would like. And you usually can't find a job like that, you know, next week. You know, it's like a 6 months to a year to just interview and be considered. And, you know, they have to really feel good about the person coming in. And so in my mind, that's the story I had. And I just did not know what to do. The income just dried up. And so I was studying A Course in Miracles, and I needed a miracle. And the one thing that I had learned is I needed to make room for God. And how do you do that? Well, sometimes we just pray, you know, God, will you show me this? Will you show me that? Will you help me know what to do next? And certainly that's great because all prayer is sacred. And I think God hears everything and is trying to help. You know, I think what happens though is without realizing it, we put our own plan in the way. So even as much as I was asking God, what do? I really didn't know what to do other than maybe sell my house. I wanted to look for another job to replace the one I had, but it all needed to happen in about a week or two, or crisis was at my doorstep. But you see, I already had that story against myself. You know, this is where we talk about those limiting beliefs. I already had that story against myself saying, well, you know, but it takes so long to get a new job. Or maybe it takes so long to work out a loan or get to an answer. And I probably at that time also believed it was up to me to pull the rabbit out of the hat. You know, that's what we're used to. We're kind of used to roughing it on our own. A lot of the time we pray, but then we go give it our best shot, you know? So I was at my wit's end. And, you know, it wasn't that I was extra strong or spiritual. I just didn't have any cards left in my hand of cards. I had played them all. So what I decided to do is I was just going to meditate until God gave me an answer. And I didn't know if that was being a little bit arrogant or how God might feel about that. But I just said, God, I just want your voice. I'm going to lay down everything I think I know about this situation and what I think should happen. And I'm just going to, I literally just laid flat out on my bed. I just wanted to forget about my body and just listen. I didn't know at the time about listening without agenda. So I think I was listening for what do I do? Right. So it's almost like listening for the color green, you know, what do I do? But I did my best. And I think that we don't have to be perfect at this. Certainly, as we get better at what doesn't work, then we can lay that down and things get faster and easier. But I laid just spread eagle on my bed and I decided I was going to meditate in that position until I got an answer. Well, about an hour and a half went by, and I was certainly more peaceful. And I was just laying there, starting to come back around to my analytical mind. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's just not the right time for the answer. So, you know, I made room for God. That was important. And I want you to realize that if or when you do this, you also have to be at peace if you don't get the answer. It could be the answer is not supposed to come until next Thursday at 1 o'clock. You don't know. And so I allowed myself to just go ahead and go on with my day. And as I was just getting ready to get up, the phone rang and I answered it. I was all done with my meditation. And it was a person I hadn't spoken to, I don't think actually ever before, because they got my phone number from someone else. And they called me with my answer. Because of a lot of personal details in that for them, I'm not going to tell you that whole big story, but I want you to know that phone call brought me my answer. And it came from someone that I didn't even know had my phone number. I want you to notice that too. When we get a God solution or a God answer, I would say maybe 100% of the time, it's an answer you don't expect. So if you're trying to solve something yourself based on what you think you know, I call your thoughts the library of the past. You know, all we have is the library of the past. You know, when I was a kid and we would go into the library and we would have all those library cards that you have to search through to try to find things. It's very complicated. It's almost like we have all those library cards up in our head. And, you know, when something goes wrong, we go searching through the cards to say, well, what did I do before? What can I pull out that I saw someone else do? You know, we're going through those cards. Close the drawer, put the cards down. My answer came from a place I could not have anticipated. And I think you'll find that even with most of my miracle stories that I have shared, and I've shared many with all of you, that the common denominator is they're not of me. It's something that happens to you generally. You might be involved at some level, like, you know, for Terry in his situation where he had a lease that was due, and this was like 30 years ago, a lease that was due, and he had too many miles on the car, and he didn't have the money to pay off the lease. And then, you know, he prayed about it, and then ultimately he was in an accident where he wasn't hurt, and his car was paid off in full the next day by his insurance company. And the woman that hit him, the drunk driver, she got the help she needed, she got healed. So notice everybody involved in a God solution, everybody gets blessed. You know, that time he had a little bit to do with the answer. He was driving the van, right? So sometimes you'll be involved, but you'll find that it gets orchestrated around you and for you, not from you. If you're tempted to start trying to muscle up and get back in that boxing ring, I just caution you. You'll probably get similar results. So when we're asking for an answer from God, by all means, listen without agenda. Make room for the answer. What does that mean to make room? Asking once, that's nice, asking twice, that's even better. But are you actually making room, like quieting your mind to listen, even if the answer doesn't come right then? Are you consistently making room to hear guidance about anything? And if you're not, I encourage you, because we are constantly preoccupied with the past or fear about the future. So we have to consciously just pause and make room for God. If you don't really know how to do that, you can imagine a white blanket in your mind and clear everything off that white blanket. You can put yourself right there in the middle and then invite Jesus or God to join you right there, in the middle of that white blanket. And just do your best to keep your thoughts off that blanket. Something wonderful happens when we make room for God. And I know He knows that we're doing that. Now, you have to be okay if your answer doesn't come immediately. In my case, it did. Maybe He thought I would just give up entirely if He didn't answer me right away. But in my case, it did come, but it didn't come until after I'd kind of given up on it. But I was also willing to not be upset that it didn't come according to my time and my idea of how it should look and all that. When you're listening, listen without agenda, make room consistently. You can use the white blanket. You could imagine just taking all of your thoughts. They're overlapping, they're busy, they're going round and round. Imagine writing them up on a chalkboard and then take the eraser and erase the board. Put the eraser down, put the chalk down, and just say, God, will you fill this board? I will listen. Another way you might do it is you could pick a word like truth or peace or God. I love using the word God. Some people have not had that word used kindly towards them, so I understand. God and love are synonymous. You could say love, you could say peace. So what you do is you quiet your mind, and every time your mind lights up again and heads off in a direction, like, aren't you supposed to go grocery shopping right now? And you just say your word, love or peace. And again, I like that word God. The first time I did a meditation like that, I gave it about 2 hours of just trying my best because my mind was a wreck at the time. So I had to give it a little extra time and an extra boost. But I just used the word God. And that's a very comfortable word for me. I love God with all my heart. And so it's like summoning the one that loves me most. So for me, it's a very good word. For you, I would love for you to get to that place with that beautiful name, but source, love, peace, truth. You're calling the same one. So I did that for a couple of hours and it was challenging. I had to keep, my mind would head off and I would just say, God, come back. But what about God, come back? How about God, come back? So I did that for a couple of hours. And it's so interesting because I got up after that and I left my office and I drove home and I pulled into the driveway. And it reminded me of when I was pregnant, which had been like 25 years before, but I got out of my car and I threw up in the bushes. I did that when I was pregnant. I remember doing that in a parking lot one time when I was first pregnant. And, you kind of throw up at the drop of a hat. But I thought, oh my gosh, what happened? But I think the focus on God for a couple of hours literally cleared me of something and it had to go quick. So I just thought that was really interesting, but it was some kind of very quick release. And I felt better after. Didn't really understand it all, but something cleared. Make room for God. I encourage you to not jump back in and start managing it yourself. You're very highly likely to get the same old results. Because if we use the past to guide us, you're going to end up with the same results. In lesson 135, where it talks about how our defenselessness is our safety. And he said, you cannot even believe what can happen if you make room for something that you don't understand that if you will make room for a different kind of answer, you can have that. That's what we're talking about today. I feel like his message as I was putting this together is don't give up on me, but be sure to give me a chance. I mean, a real chance. And, I think we take the chance back when we start trying to manage the problem ourselves again. We take the chance back when we're trying old ideas just to see if they stick. We're taking the chance back from God when we are actively judging ourselves or other people. He says grievances block the light and miracles are seen in light. If we're holding on to grievances, if you're praying for money to cover a debt that someone did not pay you, let's say, that's fine. God is, I think, all correcting, retroactive. You're praying for the money to correct the situation because maybe this other person you think is a deadbeat and they didn't do what they were supposed to do and they didn't pay you back and now you're mad at them. You see, if that grievance is there while you're asking God to help you with this, that's going to block you, in my experience. It's going to slow things down. So while you're giving God a chance, certainly every day, spend a little bit of time, even 5 minutes, 5 minutes on that white blanket, 5 minutes of just listening, not for how I solve this and how I do that and how I get this over there. You're just listening. So many times when I receive an answer, it doesn't seem like the answer at the time. If all of a sudden you get a strong urge to go down and buy some tomatoes and you're thinking, I could use those tomatoes. You just get this nudge, go buy tomatoes. And you go down and you buy those tomatoes. And then right in front of the tomato section, you run into the person that you've been trying to get a hold of. It's not much different than that. So many times you're going to be led to the answer in a way that you understand, like with tomatoes. And then God has the answer right there for you. Do you remember when I had to find something to wear to do the funeral service, after my father and my best friend died on the same day? Yeah, thank you very much, right? Still going to talk to them about that. But I was just wiped out and I needed something to wear and I just didn't know what. I was so overwhelmed with grief. But I asked God. And when you ask, he's going to answer you, but not always in the way you think, and usually not, and not usually in the timing that you're expecting, because there's a very important part of divine timing and orchestration. If you recall, what he showed me was a white dress down on the pier in Newport Beach. And I thought, well, okay, I really didn't think I needed a white dress. I wasn't getting married. I don't know. I wasn't sure a white dress was the right answer, but that's what he showed me. And I've learned be obedient. And I don't usually get pictures in my head, and I did. So I thought, okay, I've got to go. I go there, I try it on, doesn't fit at all. And I'm starting to go into doubt and frustration. And God, I must not have been listening. I must not have heard you clearly. Why am I here? And I just stopped that. And I reminded myself that I had asked God. That's the answer I got. And I needed to trust it. So there must be more. Maybe that was me. Maybe that was something telling me. I don't know. But I wandered around that store a little bit and I just thought, I'm here, God. You brought me here and I believe you did. And I'm not going to doubt it. What do you want me to know? And then I was given the next message, which was walk down the sidewalk. Terry was with me. Terry, can we walk down the sidewalk? And then at the store on the very end of that row was the perfect dress. I had already been given a dragonfly to put on the front of my best friend's program, right? And then I get this dress. It's exactly the same colors. It's rust and turquoise and cream and white and gold. It was just perfect, long dress. And then I think, well, I need a necklace to wear. I go over to the rack of necklaces and there is my rust and turquoise dragonfly that exactly matches the program and exactly matches my dress. God is perfect. I just started crying. It couldn't have been more perfect, but I want you to hear how that happened. He had to show me something I understood to lead me to something unfamiliar. And that was the perfect answer. You see, if I was just sitting around saying, what should I wear? What should I wear? How would I ever make my way to that perfect dress with that perfect pendant? Listen without agenda. In your notes, it says, do you withdraw your faith if you do not get the answers you are seeking? For a lot of people, the answer is yes, maybe most, right? And I don't think it's because we're bad people, and I don't think it's because we're not spiritual and all that. I think we've just had to deal with so much for so long. Our temptation is to manage the pain, so it's not any worse than it is. I just think it's a little old defense that we have built within ourselves to try to keep the pain level down. And so we jump back in and see what we can do. A lot of times we've solved things on our own, but usually when it's something we really need help with that we don't understand, our best ticket is back off, make room for him, make room for an answer that is completely foreign and unfamiliar to you. Do you give up on God if what you think you want has not happened yet? For most people, the answer is yet. What is this whole happening yet? When we ask, we want that answer, just like I did when I meditated. Now, if that phone had not rung when it did, I probably would have been very tempted to think, nothing happened there. What's the point? What the heck? God doesn't answer me. Don't do that. Do not use anything of this world to decide against your source and creator. That's what's blocking us in my observation. We put things between us and our answer. All we need is one good reason for God not to answer us, and he can't. He can't overrule us because he gave us free will. And in our free will, we must be willing to accept his answer, his timing, and his outcome. And it may look really different than what you had mapped out for yourself, but it's going to be the answer, because within God, every answer lies. So I just encourage you to not give up based on timing. I want you to start saying to yourself, if I ask God for an answer, I am going to have an answer. Don't overrule your own decision. Don't go into doubt because you don't see what you think you should. Don't do that, and you're going to get answers faster, right? You remember the story of my brother with the bird when he, at 4 years old, told my mother, I'd really like to have a bird. And she said, you can't have a bird. You're too young. I don't want to take care of it. And he said, well, I'm going to ask God, and I know I can have a bird. And he went out on the porch and he prayed, and the bird flew on his shoulder. And, ultimately ends up taking it into the house. And my mom said, well, I guess we're going to keep the bird. So what does a 4-year-old do? He said, I know God will give me an answer. I need you to super glue yourself to that. We use what we see sometimes all day long to convince ourselves that there is no answer, there is no God, nobody's listening, nobody cares, I'm on my own, I've got to do this, I've got to fix this, I got to figure this out. And we learn in A Course in Miracles that there's not one thing that your body needs to do when you have asked God. If there are steps to be taken, you will be told of them. And you'll know when you are, because it will be very peaceful and yet very compelling. I use a lot of quirky examples, but when you have to go to the bathroom and nobody can talk you out of it, that's very compelling, right? No matter what they say, oh, can you come over here? No, just excuse me right now. I'll be right back. It's compelling. You need to go, right? You wait till you have that kind of, I need to do this. And even if somebody says, oh, no, I need you right now, you say, no, you're going to have to wait. I need to do this. So if you get steps like that, they're peaceful, they're compelling. And if you're not sure, you think, oh, is this from my ego? Well, your ego doesn't usually talk to you in peaceful terms. It can be a little seductive from time to time. But if you're not sure, what do? You ask again. God, I think what I'm hearing you say is this. I think what I'm hearing is I'm supposed to call this person. Is that what you think? And then go do something normal and regular. Do dishes, laundry, sweep the floor. Do something to take your mind out of deciding your answer and listen again. No agenda. And you'll get it again. Boom. If it's from God, it'll be strong, it will be consistent, and you won't be able to really think about anything else. It'll just fill and flood your mind. That's how you'll know it's from Him. So when you're listening, listen without agenda. Try to listen as much as you can with all your heart, only to His voice. But by all means, don't decide against your God because it hasn't showed up in your time and your dime, right? Make room for Him. And if you start to get anxious, remind yourself, I ask my God, and my God will answer me. I believe He loves that kind of certainty, and He responds to it so well. Give yourself that time. Do you feel like God is not hearing you unless your plan is fulfilled? What if the plan is supposed to look really different than what you think it should? That's going to be most of the time. God will give us answers, direction, guidance all along the way. Sure, you'll feel that too. Or things will happen that just seem to bless you out of nowhere. That's great too. But when it's a really big thing, like maybe you're moving, maybe it's a relationship challenge, when it's really big in your heart, be willing for the answer to look like something you've never seen before. Because you're drawing from a resource that is infinite and has every available opportunity. Do you jump back in and start managing your own life and problems, inserting your own answers when God is not acting fast enough for you? One thing I've noticed is when I'm asking for guidance about, we're going to listen at some level with an agenda. Try not to, but it's hard not to. If you have a mortgage payment due by Friday and you don't know how you're going to pay it, or you've got a chronic illness that's keeping you awake all night and you're in terrible pain, it's hard to not listen for that answer, but try anyway. Forgive yourself if you start to get specific. It's just tempting. But the more you can listen without agenda, the more you will hear answers that are outside the box and you'll recognize them. There's an experiment you can do where you just look around your own room right now and notice everything that's brown, everything that's brown, and then close your eyes. And then I ask you, tell me what's in your room that was red. It's your room, so you probably know, but most people miss it entirely. You have no idea what was red. So when we're looking for something specifically, you miss everything else. So let's try to listen without agenda, even though I know that sometimes the problem can be so great. It's like a gorilla on your back and you're trying to not think about that gorilla, even though it's weighing you down and crushing you and suffocating you, but try anyway. God, I'm listening to your voice, even if you're going to tell me something that has nothing to do with my gorilla. I'm just going to listen. And I am not going to talk myself out of your answer. And I am going to trust that if I asked you, you will answer me. I also am aware that I don't know the divine timing. It could be that the answer can't be given you until tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. It just happens that's when it shows up. And so what do you do between now and 10 o'clock? You have to actually stand in your faith. The ego doesn't like this one bit. When we are standing in our faith and we're allowing an answer, the ego says, oh, you're so weak and you better jump in and manage this. This is going south. And, if you don't jump in right away, this is going to get worse or you'll have nothing at all. Sound familiar? We all have an ego. And what I've noticed over time is it always tries to convince you you're not enough, you're not loved, you're not worthy, you're not safe. And if you don't play with those, it hops the fence and says, well, you better be afraid of the future because your future is not looking good. But it's always trying to convince you. If you try to pull your attention away from the fear, away from the teacher of fear, it says, you better not pull your attention away from me because you're going to end up with nothing or it's going to get worse for you. That's all it knows. I want you to think of it like a recording in the corner of your room. That's all it knows to say. And notice how often it says it, and it's not going to say anything else. Anytime you ever think that you're not sure what's going to happen, your ego will gladly jump in and offer you this perspective. It's going to get worse, or you'll have nothing. You better jump in and fix this. Do you get upset, impatient, or frustrated with God because your plan has not been fulfilled? Be careful of that, because, even if we have a noble plan, and I've had many noble plans. I had 3 healing centers that I thought were so noble and wonderful, and all I wanted to do was help people. And it just kept failing. But it was because I was trying to get God to fulfill my plan. And I didn't get that. It took me 3 times of bringing it up and having to take it down a couple years later, because I was trying to do it with, a lot of volunteer and a lot of non money being changed hands. And so trying to pay for a $4,000 building under those circumstances was really challenging for me, because I didn't understand that I was launching off trying to do my own plan, and I was asking God to fulfill my plan. Even though it's very noble, very sweet, a lot of people benefited. Some people got married as a result. Like, a lot of blessings came from it, but it was hard. It was like falling off a cliff and hitting all the branches, Why? And finally, the 3rd time, I was getting a little better at trying to practice some of these things. And I learned that I was playing Come On, God. Come on, God is when you're saying, come on, God, help me do this. Come on, God, show me how to do that. Come on, God, I have already decided about this and it's so good and it's wonderful. Come on, let's do this together. Doesn't work that way. We get quiet, lay down in your mind just during prayer time. Lay down everything you think you know as much as you can, everything you think you've decided, everything you think you must do or accomplish. Just lay that down for a few minutes. Fire yourself. I say fire yourself every day. Make room for God. And now you're listening for God's plan. He says in A Course in Miracles, he says, once you have accepted his plan as the one function you would fulfill, nothing you need will be denied you, not one seeming difficulty, but will melt away before you reach it. That sounds good, right? Can you imagine? Nothing you need will be denied you, not one seeming difficulty, but will melt away before you reach it. But what kickstarts that? Accepting God's plan. Now, your ego says, well, you can't accept God's plan because what about your plan? You've got all this time invested. It might be in a relationship with this person. What about this time invested in this project, this creation, whatever it is you're doing? And you believe through your ego, courtesy of your ego, that if you make room for only God's plan, it means you lose. That's what your ego says. If you let God decide this, you're going to somehow get screwed in the process. That's what your ego says. If you do that, you're going to lose, or it will get worse for you. But that's not what happens. When you invite this divine wisdom to guide your life without agenda, literally, if it says, I want you to move to San Diego, California, you're thinking, San Diego, that's way far away from any place I've ever been, let's say. If it feels peaceful and you're listening to God, it's going to feel compelling too. And you're going to get signals all over the place that this is where you're supposed to go. And you might just find your life partner there. You might just find the best job you've ever had in your life. You might just find that the weather is the most beautiful you've ever imagined. You don't know. But when you invite God and God's plan for your life, it's the one sure way you will be happy. And what you're going to find is all those joyful thoughts and ideas you have in your heart, you're going to see those too. He doesn't leave those out. Anything that comes from joy is part of him. Anything that comes from fear is from our ego, courtesy of. So when you invite God's plan, you don't have to be scared that you will lose your best creations, right? what will happen is that you will open your eyes one day to see that your most joyful thoughts have manifested exponentially. It will be better, and you will not have lost anything of value to you.
Robin,
Yes.
this is Kathy. I just want to share a
Sure.
miracle story um, along the lines of what you're saying. A few years ago, when I was filing for disability, the conventional wisdom was to get an attorney. It was like I was hearing it from all directions, that you don't stand a chance if you don't get an attorney. So, I started looking for one. I had a phone consultation with a couple of them, but when it came to following through, it never felt right. And of course my ego just kept pushing. Like I was like, well, but I need an attorney. Why is this not feeling right? And so I'd contact another one, and then it wasn't feeling right. And so I just dropped it all, pulled back, and sat in meditation for a long time. And when I came out of the meditation, I had like a clear kind of knowing that I didn't need one, but then I was guided to call the assistant of the judge who was going to be presiding over my case. And I had called her a few times previously to get some information and could never reach her. I'm sure she's terribly busy. I always got her voicemail, but this time she picked up and she spent 45 minutes with me on the phone, proceeding to tell me that I did not need an attorney. She explained exactly how it was going to go down, exactly what I was going to be asked, exactly what I needed, and just it was just amazing. And so I just knew without a doubt that I didn't need one after that, and I did win my case. And also, the interesting thing is, there's an initial payout, because like 2 years, almost 2 years had passed since I had first filed. So they give you this lump sum of money that's like a back pay, but they tell you that it's going to take like a couple months to get it. And there's going to be somebody that's going to call you from the Social Security office, and you have to go through all this stuff. To my astonishment, that payment was deposited in my account 2 days after my interview with 2 days after I found out that I won my case. And the lady from the Social Security office called me to proceed with the interview. And I said, well, I've already gotten the money. And she's like, what? She was just like blown away. She's like, that has never happened. That is
Never happens, right? But
anyways.
oh, that is beautiful, Kathy. And with God's solutions, things happen that are miraculous all along the way. And what I love is the assistant that you talk to on the phone. You'll find that God's helpers show up. The people that are listening, the people, you probably don't know her whole spiritual background, but I bet she's a God messenger. She's probably somebody that listens and allows herself to be an instrument. And here she just gave you all that wonderful information. But notice when people show up in your life to help you, most of the time they are self-proclaimed God messengers, not meaning like a gift to the world, but they're people that listen and pray and ask, and they're guided. And notice the people that show up in your life to help you. It's kind of sweet because that God is talking to them and they are listening, and then they know exactly what to do. What a great story, Kathy. You also brought up a good point that when all of a sudden you get something that's a little not great, like Kathy ended up getting information that, oh, this is going to take 2 months and it's going to, take forever. And, it's got all this complexity around it. I want you to think of that like an ego's hot potato. You ever played hot potato? Imagine heating up a potato in the oven and you're tossing it back and forth. You wouldn't keep it very long, right? If something comes to you, or is being presented to you and it's not a 10, it's not from God. Toss it back, meaning in your mind, don't keep it, don't dwell on it, don't fret over it, toss it back in your mind. Maybe you're trying to move. You've looked at every option and nothing's affordable and nothing's great and everything is a compromise. Hot potato, throw it back. If it's not a 10, it's not of God. And that's tricky because there might be one that is a 7.5 out of 10. And they're saying, you need to tell us by today if you're going to take this place. What I would do is take it back to prayer. Everything goes to prayer. Everything comes from God. So you take it back to the one that has the answer. Dear God, I have this opportunity. It's this place that, it's the best of everything I could find. It's like a 7.5 out of a 10. It's not a 10. I know that you only give out 10s. So I'm not quite sure what to do. Would you have me say yes to this right now and then, up into my 10 later? Would you have me say no to this right now and then just let you show me something else? Take it back. Take it back to God. And then get quiet again. Listen without agenda again. You're going to have a compelling answer. You might find that, yeah, you need to say yes to this, maybe even for 2 weeks. And what you might find is that the right answer drops in 2 weeks later. And then you find out that the landlord of the place you were saying yes to all of a sudden can't do it anymore. And you let them out of the deal and then the good one comes in. And I call that a placeholder. Sometimes there's a divine orchestration going on and God uses placeholders. But it doesn't mean anything bad happened. It means you felt guided to say yes, even though it wasn't a 10, but you asked God and felt peaceful. So you just go forward. You cannot lose with God. And then 2 weeks later, it all unravels, but for all the right reasons. And then you're in the right place. Be aware of placeholders. I've seen many of them. Sometimes we are so prone to be afraid and anxious when something bad is going on that I feel God uses placeholders to keep us busy and out of mind wandering and trouble. Let's say that you're looking for a job, but the right job hasn't shown up yet. And in the meantime, this one company keeps calling you and they keep interviewing you and they keep not getting back to you. And it's kind of this ongoing thing. And then let's say the 15th of next month is the day that you find about the right job. And all this time you've been busy being kind of romanced by this company that you're not sure that you want, but you're not sure what else to do. There's a placeholder for you. It almost like kept you busy and feeling wanted and desired and valuable until the right job could be lined up. So let those be. Enjoy them as they occur. The next point I have here is you must accept God's will. We don't have to, of course, but you must accept God's will in the place of your own for lasting healing to be accomplished. Why? Keep in mind, the truth that we have learned is that God created us whole. In the beginning, God created everything and it was good and he was done, right? So God created us whole. We are eternal. We are spiritual beings. We are perfect in his name. We are holy. We are filled with love and joy and peace. And God knows who we are. He created us. Somewhere along the way, remember, Adam falls asleep and then things get off track, right? Adam falls asleep. And then all of a sudden we are these bodies that have ailments and problems and lack and challenges. And so now we have a whole story that we have made. And it doesn't look much like that original truth that we once knew. So I want you to think of the truth over here. The illusion or the story of what we are is over here. And you can only focus on one at a time. Every time you focus on one, you will forfeit your awareness of the other. So when we accept God's plan over here, we must also accept who we are and who everybody else is. God says that everyone is created holy, perfect, loving, blessed, and happy. But our eyes open and we say, well, that's not what I see. I see a lot of people doing wrong things, bad things, evil things. That's coming from over here, right? So if we jump onto the story that we have made, you're not going to hear God's plan. You're going to hear your ego's plan. And your ego doesn't love you, and your ego doesn't want you to be happy. Your ego doesn't want you to be successful. It actually wants you to die in the end, and a suffering death, all the better, according to your ego. God says you have eternal life. You don't die. We've got these options. And when you accept God's plan, in order to receive it, we have to actually make room for it. But we must agree with our source about that which we are and that which everyone else is. If you're seeing someone over here in your life as sick or sad or broken or lacking or difficult or arrogant or egocentric or what, or angry or addicted, anything less than perfect, that's the perfect over here. But as we see them imperfect, then we have chosen our story to be our guide, our illusions to be our guide. So how do you break this apart? What I like to do is not try to look at the person that I think is imperfect and get them to morph into an angel. You can't really do that because you've already limited them in your mind with your own story about them. Try to imagine that what God says they are is standing behind you and you forgot what they look like, right? But just separate it in your mind, because what we have decided about other people has nothing to do with what God created. So we just kind of have to break that apart in our mind. Imagine that who they are, like almost a beautiful archangel in spirit, is standing behind you. You still can't see them, but you know they're back there. And then when you're in prayer, you're listening for God's plan. I want you to imagine every single person is standing back there behind you in their perfect, holy, loving state that can only bless your life, including yourself. That you are not this body, you are not this bundle of errors, right? That you're actually back there too. And you're not asked to morph these bodies into those spirits back there behind you. I feel like the Holy Spirit just wants to know you get it. You understand what you're looking at is a lie. What you're looking at is projection. What you're looking at is the false images you have made that are blocking the truth from your mind. If you will just break that apart in your prayer time, put everybody back there behind you, just not in a ego kind of way, but behind you where you could imagine they're still holy. They're still pure love. They're still beautiful. They're still perfect. And they can only bless your life. And then in your prayer, you can say, Dear God, I ask for only your plan. And I choose to see all of your children as those ones behind me right there that are still in their perfectly holy, blessed state. They are not what I have made of them in my dream, the figures in my dream. They are what you have made, and I am among them. Try to stay focused on their holiness. It says in the chorus where Jesus says, Imagine what I can give to you when you see me in everyone. That's hard to do in the body that is the person that has the bad attitude or cuts you off on the freeway. But if you leave them over there in your mind and you kind of go back here and meet them in their holiness there, you can do it. And all you're doing is you're letting God know that you are more interested in the truth of who they are than in the story we have made. He needs to know you get that, because he cannot override your stories. And so even if you have a dear loved one that seems so sick and fragile, this is one of the best things you can do for them. You're not abandoning them. Take the body, the sickness that you see, give that to God. God, I give you this image of this person where it looks like they're struggling or they're dying or they're hurting. I give you this whole problem. I place it in your hands. Place it in God's hands. You need to put it somewhere, or you truly won't let it go from your mind, because you'll feel like you've abandoned them. So give that whole problem, the situation, the sickness, the illness, the body, your love, everything over to God. And now try turning around in your mind and just focus on that person's perfection. See them smiling, glowing, happy, whole, blessed, invulnerable. They cannot be sick because God did not create it. They are eternal. They are loved. They are blessed. They're a blessing in your life. They are one with you. And then be sure to see that about yourself also. And then give that to God too. God, my devotion, my loyalty is to what you say they are. And I'm just going to give it my best shot of being in touch with that. I'm going to super glue myself to the truth of who they are. And will you guide me from here? And now you are so guidable because there's no disagreements on the table. You know, when there's a disagreement, God says they're perfect, whole, happy, and blessed. And we're seeing them as sick, suffering, and dying, right? So what gives? Let's give him the image we have made, and let's be willing to accept without reservation what God says they are. And then we can ask God for the vision to see what he sees, for the thoughts to know what he knows. And now you're ready to receive because you've cleared out your mind enough to be given that revelation. Here in our notes, it says only God's plan will work. Why? Because God has never decided against us. We're the ones that decide against ourselves, each other. We decide against God. We decide against our future. We decide against our past. We decide against a lot. God never has. So when we're asking for a plan that will work, we want to go to that place of consciousness that has never decided against us. That is the most reliable source. In the Course, it says you are responding to your interpretation of the problem, not the problem itself. You know, if you don't have enough money, you might think, well, I have to get more money. If you are sick, you think, well, I need to get well. If you have a conflict in relationship, I need to get more harmony going in this relationship. If you need to move, I need to find a new place, right? So we're responding to our interpretation of the problem we see. But what he's teaching us is that God doesn't do it that way. God responds to the problem as it is. And so if we will turn to that place of consciousness without interpretation, without deciding what we need, without deciding that God is not moving fast enough for us and we'd better get a hold of things or things are going to go off the rails, if we will just listen without agenda. God knows the whole thing. You know, through the Holy Spirit, he says the Holy Spirit knows our illusions and what we're dealing with. And the Holy Spirit also knows the absolute realm of truth as God created it. So we already have this bridge of consciousness that is working for us and with us. It says there in chapter 12, to interpret error is to give it power. And having done this, you will overlook truth. When you try to interpret the problem and the answer yourself, you will give it power and you will overlook truth. The ego seeks to resolve its problems not at their source, but where they were not made. And thus, it seeks to guarantee there will be no solution. God solves the problem at their source, which is in our mind, and we don't remember creating that problem. We don't remember we have a problem. We're looking at the effects of the problem, trying to solve it there. And he said, you can't solve a problem at the level of the effect of the problem. You must always solve it at its source. And, you know, so many times I've used that example that, you know, let's say a faucet is broken in your backyard. You live on a hill and all the water is running down to your front yard and your front yard's flooded and you're out there bucketing that water and you're trying to get it to go in a different direction and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Your front yard is flooded. You have no idea that it's the backyard that's the issue. The faucet is up there on the hill. You don't know because you're so busy trying to bail water in your front lawn. You have no idea that you're dealing with the effect of the problem and not its cause. Whenever we have a problem, he said, we are interpreting it. And if you interpret it, you give it power and you will overlook the truth. Let's read a few quotes and then hopefully these will make a lot of sense here. You cannot find the light by analyzing darkness. Now, it's always good to be open to where you might be mistaken, where there might be a misperception that needs correction. It's great to be open to that, but don't spend hours and hours studying, all the symptoms of your illness so you can solve it there. You might want to get a good idea briefly about why you think you have your problem and why you think something in particular is the answer. If you like, it might give you more clarity around what you've been thinking about before you go to prayer. That's fine. But he said, don't try to purify yourself before you come to me. I am the purifier. But sometimes we're trying to give a problem to God and we haven't even really defined it ourselves. We just want the pain to stop. Sometimes it's good to ask yourself, why am I hurting? I'm hurting because this person never called me back, or I'm hurting because I really needed that opportunity and it left. You know, it's good to get clear about what's upsetting you, but don't spend days and hours, just get some clarity so you can turn it over. When God said, let there be light, there was light. Can you find light by analyzing darkness, as the psychotherapist does, or like the theologian, by acknowledging darkness in yourself and looking for a distant light to remove it, while emphasizing the distance? Nothing will change unless it is understood, since light is understanding. I think that's where he's saying, understand what you're asking for, what you need help with, but don't dwell on you finding all the answers, because if we're the ones that got lost, we're not likely the ones to find those answers. The Holy Spirit is the only therapist. He makes healing clear in any situation in which he is the guide. You can only let him fulfill his function. He needs no help for this. That's where we have to get tough about, I have prayed, I am listening without agenda, and my God will answer me. He tells you right there. He will make healing clear in any situation where he is the guide. If you take it back over and you start using your ego, yourself, to guide yourself out of the problem, you just took it back. Think about it. No take backs. No take backs. Your comforter will rest you, but you cannot. When you are weary, remember you have hurt yourself. Your comforter will rest you, but you cannot. You do not know how. For if you did, you could never have grown weary. Unless you hurt yourself, you could never suffer in any way, for that is not God's will for his Son. Pain is not of him, for he knows no attack, and his peace surrounds you silently. God is very quiet, for there is no conflict in him. Earlier we were talking about, why should you accept God's will? I think the biggest reason is because God has never decided against us. The plan that he holds for us is based on creating us, knowing us completely right down to the number of hairs on our head, knowing everything that we love and enjoy, choosing everything to fulfill that happiness, and never having decided against it, still holding that gift for you that was given a long time ago, accomplished already. All we're doing is receiving it now. So when we receive from God, we are receiving his plan. What is it, though, for our happiness? It's not his plan for our suffering. It's his plan for our happiness. Don't knock it till you tried it, right? When you have said, God's will is mine, you will see beauty that you know is not of you. The first time I read this paragraph, it really struck me, because I thought, well, that's pretty easy. I can do that. Sure. God's will is mine. I just, at the time, didn't realize how important that was. Now I get it, at least much more than I did before, that I had my own will going on most of the time and it wasn't being fulfilled. And I was frustrated and thought no one was listening and no one was helping. And all right, God's will is mine. But what does that mean? It means that whatever happens, we accept it. Let all things be exactly as they are. Because if we don't accept exactly what happens, exactly as it happens, it means we have another will. We have another plan. If you think this person's supposed to come over at 2 o'clock and bring you a check, and that check is going to be an answer to a whole bunch of problems, what if they don't show up at 2? It's not your plan. You don't know if they were supposed to show up at 2 or not. They might show up early, they might show up late, they might show up tomorrow. If you accept God's plan, and you really are, you can't judge that. If you decide that's wrong and that's bad, that means you have your own plan and you are fulfilling your own plan and you're using God to do it. You can do that. I caution you though, it takes longer. So that means, and God will not make you suffer, and you will not be punished, and you will not be delayed for long. Sometimes things are just being arranged. It could be that person was supposed to come at 2 and they didn't, and you never saw them again in your life. But at 5 p.m. that day, somebody did come and they brought you 10 times as much. That you never even thought about it again. God's plan means God's plan. It means whatever happens, let it be. Bless it. No, it's one more giant step to your happiness, whatever it is, whatever it looks like. And let God know you're on board. God, I may not understand this. It sure seems like it would have happened differently to me, but my mind is based on the past. And I'm making room for you and a whole new way of thinking and being and living. And I'm going to accept this exactly as it is. That's why he has that lesson title, Let All Things Be Exactly as They Are. Not so you're a doormat or you get punished. It's to let it be exactly as it is. Because if you start messing with it and judging it, you are headlong back into the illusions. And your ego becomes your guide again. Oh, my child, if you knew what God wills for you, your joy would be complete. And what he wills has happened, for it was always true. When the light comes and you have said, God's will is mine, you will see such beauty that you will know it is not of you. Out of your joy, you will create beauty in his name, for your joy could no more be contained than his. I cannot tell you what this will be like, for your heart is not ready. Yet I can tell you and remind you often that what God wills for himself, he wills for you. And what he wills for you is yours. Powerful. The way is not hard, but it is very different. Yours is the way of pain, for which God knows nothing. That way is hard indeed and very lonely. Fear and grief are your guests, and they go with you and abide with you on the way, but the dark journey is not the way of God's Son. Walk in the light and do not see the dark companions, for they are not fit companions for the Son of God, who was created of light and in light. The great light always surrounds you and shines out from you. How can you see the dark companions in light such as this? If you see them, it is only because you are denying the light. But deny them instead, for the light is here and the way is clear. All right, who are these dark companions? Well, it starts with fear and grief and judgment and lack and the other things we see. If we give that a home in our mind, you're going to see people show up and they're going to make you fearful or make you sad or disappointed or unhappy. I believe dark companions are the thoughts that we are giving a home in our mind that are of darkness, everything that's not of the light. And then we project those thoughts into the world we see. And then those people tend to have all those symbols that represent those dark thoughts. So you can think of dark companions as the people you are judging against, the people that seem imperfect and lacking and a problem in your life, a detriment. Those you could consider dark companions, not the people themselves, but your story about them. In your story, they are your dark companions. In your story, you have dark thoughts in your mind that you're projecting onto them. That's how they get there. So he's saying you have a choice. Don't walk with dark companions. That doesn't mean don't walk with these people. It means do not walk with your story about them. Do not keep that story. Remember, how do we do it? Put them over there in front of you in your mind, even 5 minutes, and then imagine the real deal is behind you and give that your attention. Turn around in your mind and behold the light of the holy child of God as God created them, not what we have made. So you can do this any moment of any day, and you're letting God know that you're much more interested in what God says he created than the stories we have made that we are now looking at. You can do this. Do not walk with dark companions. Do not keep those thoughts. Do not feed those thoughts in your mind. The ego seeks to resolve its problems, not at their source, but where they were not made. And thus it seeks to guarantee there will be no solution. The Holy Spirit wants only to make his resolutions complete and perfect. And so he seeks and finds the source of problems where it is, and there undoes it. Let's say the situation you're looking at that seems to be a problem is a situation of lack. Maybe you need a whole bunch of money to pay for something at work or something going on that's important to you. You think lack of money is your problem. God knows it's not. Lack of money is not your problem. Your problem is you forgot who you are, that which created you, that which gave you everything already. Your problem is that you forgot that you're one with God and that you're not separated. So when that problem is healed in your mind, do you realize you're going to look out through these eyes and you're going to see you have no lack? If you think your problem is lack of money, lack of sales, lack of marketing, lack of hype, lack of whatever it is you think you need, that's not your problem, according to what we're learning here. God knows what your real problem is. That's why we have to listen without agenda. That's why we allow the Holy Spirit to intervene and heal our mind, because we don't remember the real problem and it's in our mind. You will never lose your way, for God leads you. When you wander, you but undertake a journey that is not real. The dark companions, the dark way, are all illusions. Turn toward the light, for the little spark in you is part of a light so great that it can sweep you out of all darkness forever. For your Father is your creator, and you are like him. Do not be deceived by the dark comforters, those people we are judging as less than perfect. And never let them enter the mind of God's Son. Never let your story about them stay in your mind. For they have no place in his temple, which is us. When you are tempted to deny God, remember that there are no other gods to place before him and accept his will for you in peace. For you cannot accept it otherwise. I put this next one in an asterisk because it was so important. Your mind must be as pure as his if you would know what belongs to you. And you might think, well, okay, Robin, how do I get my mind as pure as God's? You probably can't, but you can want to. And that's all he wants. He wants you to remember your purity, your holiness, your happiness, your joy, your peace, your beauty. And he also wants you to remember that in everybody else. And if you're willing, to stay focused on that, God will finish it. He will bring back that awareness, that revelation. But that comes through invitation, it comes through desire. You know, when somebody mistreats you or treats you unfairly, our temptation, of course, is to just lash out or be upset, be hurt. But if your goal is to remember God, that's above all else. Remember your true relationship with God. And He's saying, in order to remember me, you have to remember me and everyone. Oh, that's rough, but we can do it. So, say that person just upset you, you're at home, you're getting ready to be upset about it. And instead, you just leave that story, you give that over to God, that story, that hurt, that pain that you experienced, give that to Him. And then try to imagine turning around in your mind and try to behold that person in their holiness, their light, their beauty, their joy. And then try to see that about yourself. You're not making it happen. It already happened. What you're saying is, that's what I want. I want to remember what's true. I want to remember what God created. Now let's hear this again. Your mind must be as pure as His if you would know what belongs to you. So what you just did is you refused your old story about them, didn't you? That's all you need to do. You just have to really want to refuse it, because that's when the Holy Spirit can intervene and fulfill and accomplish the healing. Only God's comforter can comfort you. In the quiet of His temple, He waits to give you the peace that is yours. You are His temple, but your temple has to be quiet, right? How is your temple quiet? When you're reflecting on, focusing on, asking for the vision to remember what's real and true. Things will quiet down and you will have help. Give His peace. So every time you're choosing to see that person in their true state, you're actually offering peace to that person. Give His peace that you may enter the temple and find it waiting for you. But be holy in the presence of God, or you will not know that you are there. Keep your mind focused on holiness. Not that you have to do everything perfectly, but try to not hold dark thoughts in your mind, thoughts about what people are doing wrong or how they're imperfect or what they're not doing right or how they have deceived you or betrayed you or disappointed you. Those are dark thoughts, and dark thoughts produce dark shadow figures, and it's dark companions, and don't keep those in your mind. Just stay focused on their light, their truth, their perfection, their grace, even and especially when you can't see it, and the Holy Spirit will show you. For what is unlike God cannot enter His mind, because it is not His thought, and therefore does not belong to Him. And your mind must be as pure as His, if you would know what belongs to you. Guard carefully His temple, for He Himself dwells there and abides in peace. It's kind of like, I think about it like taking a whole trash can full of garbage into a really pristine, holy, heavenly temple. They'd say, you're not bringing that in here, right? So it's not that you're not welcome. Your garbage isn't welcome, right? So when you have judgments or thoughts against someone, or you're feeling like you are inadequate, or they are, or they're not doing something right, or you're not, or that's the garbage in the can. That has to stay out. Keep your temple clear, which is your mind, your heart. And then God can enter. You cannot enter God's presence with the dark companions beside you, but you also cannot enter alone. All your brothers must enter with you, for until you have accepted them, you cannot enter. For you cannot understand wholeness unless you are whole, and no part of the Son can be excluded if he would know the wholeness of his Father. So it doesn't mean you have to make yourself whole to be recognized by God. He's asking you to remember that you and everyone else is already whole. That's what you're doing when you're in prayer and you flip around and you just focus on the purity and the perfection of that person, the light within them. You're reflecting on their wholeness. You're saying, that's where I'm going to put my attention. That's where I'm going to invest my time. And as long as that's where you're placing your time and attention, God says, that's great, because now we have no disagreements. You're not bringing that garbage into my house, right? So you've left all that garbage behind. The one that says, this person's lying to me, this person is a flip-flopper, this person is evil, this person is a detriment in my life, all those thoughts. Or maybe yourself, I'm inadequate, I'm not loved, I'm not valued, and God's not listening. Those are garbage thoughts. You can't bring that into God's temple. They're going to make you leave it outside. So get rid of it now. You can't bring it with you. Practice being without it. In your mind, you can accept the whole sonship and bless it with the light your Father gave it. You could do that right now. You can imagine the whole world is standing behind you, almost 9 billion people standing behind you right there. And every one of them is pure love. Every one of them loves you deeply and completely. Every one of them goes out of their way to help you and love you and encourage you, and that you love them. Just imagine that. That's the truth. We've made up that other story. It's not so good. Stay focused on the truth. He says all of our brothers must enter with us. Now, what that means is you're not responsible to have everybody enter with you. You're responsible to not exclude anyone because you think they're evil, dark, bad, mean, disappointing, a problem, too much of a drain on your life. If there's a person that you would not let into the gate of heaven before you, we have to rethink that a little, because everyone has to be able to enter together. Separation is not real. In your mind, you can accept the whole sonship and bless it with the light your Father gave it. Then you will be worthy to dwell in the temple with him, because it is your will not to be alone. God blessed his Son forever. If you will bless him, little h, that's everybody else. If you will bless him in time, you will be in eternity. Time cannot separate you from God if you use it on behalf of the eternal. So he's really asking us there to be determined to see only the holiness, the light, and the innocence of every other person. Anything less is the story we made up. The light is in you. Darkness can cover it, but cannot put it out. Your goal was darkness when you came here in this experience, in which no ray of light could enter. And you sought a blackness so complete that you could hide from truth forever in complete insanity. What you forgot was simply that God cannot destroy himself. The light is in you. Darkness can cover it, but cannot put it out. As the light comes nearer, you will rush to darkness. So think of that when you're really trying to remember the truth and the light and God and your relationship, it gets scary because your ego amps up a bit. It wants your attention back through distraction, and it's going to rummage through your junk in the trunk and go bring out anything it can think of to distract you back into littleness and fear. As the light comes nearer, you will rush to darkness, shrinking from the truth, sometimes retreating to the lesser forms of fear, and sometimes to stark terror. So just count on it, set your watch to it, don't make it mean anything. But you will advance, because your goal is the advance from fear to truth. The goal you accepted is the goal of knowledge, for which you signified your willingness. So you've already said, God, I want to know you. I want to remember you. I want the truth. How many times has anybody in here ever asked for the truth? A bazillion times, I'm sure, in one way or another. You've asked for it. You're going to get it. If you keep running away from it, it takes longer, but you're going to get it, and it will be successful. Fear seems to live in darkness, and when you are afraid, you have stepped back. Let us then join quickly in an instant of light, and it will be enough to remind you that your goal is light. So keep your goal, the light of truth. Your goal, your relationship with God. Your goal, listening to only one voice. Your goal, only seeing the light and holiness in everyone. Your goal, to have no disagreements about what God says you are or they are. When you do this, your listening will be amplified. Nothing will be in the way. Try to listen to somebody with a pillow over your ears. When we have a whole story about other people or ourselves or the world, that's like pillows over our ears. And then we say, but God's not saying anything. And it's like, well, it's because we formed an arsenal of defenses against the truth. If you knew who walks beside you, fear would be impossible. Just think about that for a moment. We don't know. We don't remember, but we can want to remember, and we can actually act like we want to remember. Be consistent. Give him room every day. Tell him you want to remember. Talk to him every day. Even if you hear nothing back, talk some more. God, I want to know that you walk beside me. I want to know what life is like with no fear. I know I certainly have less. Certainly. I would say it's gone from like 80% down to 10. It's way, way less. And I know I am on my way to fearlessness, because that which created me and loves me deeply is a perfect guide and has no fear. So if we are one, then I'm on my way to fearlessness, and I trust that. Truth has rushed to meet you since you called upon it. If you knew who walks beside you on the way that you have chosen, fear would be impossible. You do not know because the journey into darkness has been long and cruel, and you have gone deep into it. You are advancing to love's meaning and away from all illusions in which you have surrounded it. When you retreat to the illusion, your fear increases, for there is little doubt that what you think it means is fearful. So I think right there he gives you a bit of a hall pass because he's saying, look, the reason you still have all this fear is because the journey you have chosen has been long and cruel, and you've gone deep into it. He's not saying you're screwed up or you're a bad person or you're not listening to me. He's saying, I understand. It's like you've fallen into the deepest, darkest nightmare, and now you don't remember your way out. But he says, I am here and I am walking with you. And the more you trust that and you're willing to listen to that and not depend on yourself to save you, it's going to walk you right out of it. Do you believe that I would leave you in darkness, that you agreed to leave with me? You who hold your brother's hand also hold mine. For when you joined each other, you were not alone. Do you believe that I would leave you in the darkness that you agreed to leave with me? In your relationship is this world's light. Be tempted not to snatch away the gift of faith you offered to your brother. You will succeed only in frightening yourself. The gift is given forever, for God himself received it. You cannot take it back. You have accepted God. The holiness of your relationship is established in heaven. You do not understand what you accepted, but remember that your understanding is not necessary. All that was necessary was merely the wish to understand. That wish was the desire to be holy. The will of God is granted you, for you desire the only thing you ever had or ever were. He wants that to be our desire, to want to remember what we are and nothing more, just what we are, because it includes everything. And this brother that he speaks of is everyone else. He says every time, you're willing to see another person as whole, complete, perfect, innocent, blessed, a blessing in your life, even though you're seeing so much less, but you're willing to imagine they're right here behind you and you're going to put your attention there. Every time you do this, you are welcoming God. You are allowing his true relationship with you to be known again. And he said, once you say it once, that you're willing to see somebody differently, you can't take it back. You can try to put it back, but it's going to be finished. Because the minute you want the truth, you have summoned the truth and you're going to have it. How long will it take? It won't take long if you don't keep deciding against it again and again and again and again, right? It takes a little more time, but you will be successful. He says that wish is the desire to be holy. Just think in your life right now, and not in a way of judgment. Is there any area in your life where you feel like you're not being all that holy, or you're not even trying? And it might be your judgments against others. Maybe they're not so holy. Maybe it's not taking care of yourself, or your home, or your car. You're just kind of neglecting things. That's not really holy. And this isn't to have you judge yourself, but to just reflect a little bit. Are there areas? I don't think it's as much about you being holy as you not using the world you see and the life you have to choose to feel guilty about yourself. The more you try to align with holiness, the less guilty you will be tempted to feel. It's all about the guilt. Guilt is like a block to God. He says, what you invest in guilt, you withdraw from God. The point of targeting holiness in yourself and others, and seeing them that way, and seeing yourself that way, and living your life in accordance with holiness. Like, try to imagine whatever you would do. Would you do it with Jesus sitting next to you? If your answer is yes, then good. You're probably in a good place, right? If it's something you would hide or wish didn't happen, you might want to rethink that. Remember, you can't bring that big garbage can with you through the gate. So whatever it is that we're trying to haul around that's not holy, and yet we want to at some point remember the truth, which is holy, the more we're connected to the unholiness, the more we will feel delayed. But it's not punishment. It's just that you can't bring it with you. And so practice holiness. Practice, am I doing and saying and thinking things that I would do if Jesus was aware of all of it, which he is? And it's not about you being judged. It's about not making choices that encourage you to feel guilty or project guilt on someone, because that's like throwing a blanket over your holy mind, and then you can't see. I love this line in here. He says, those who would see will see. Don't doubt it. Today, maybe you could lay down all doubt. I think that changed for me along the way, as I used to doubt myself and think, oh, I should be further along. If anybody should know this, look, I teach it all the time. How come I'm, falling back into judgment? Here I am. What am I doing? How come I'm doing this? And I would doubt, and I would, blast myself. And I finally realized through his great counsel, I needed to stop that and try with all my might to stop doubting God, stop doubting myself, stop doubting my listening, stop doubting that I am holy, stop doubting that I am worthy, stop doubting that God does love me and will answer. And I just one day decided I would do my best, just drop the whole doubt conversation. And, it might wander back in from time to time, but it doesn't get to stay long. Those who would see will see. You have been willing to bring darkness to light, and this willingness has given strength to everyone who would remain in darkness. Every one of you here that has been willing to be here, practice, see the light in the place of the darkness, see the truth instead of the lie. He said, you're blessing and bringing strength to everyone, everywhere. Those who would see will see, and they will join with me in carrying their light into the darkness when the darkness in them is offered to the light and is removed forever. My need for you, joined with me in the holy light of your relationship, is your need for salvation. Would I not give you what you gave to me? For when you joined your brother by seeing them truly, at least willing to, you answered me. Every time you choose to see the light, truth, and holiness in others, you're answering God. Heaven is joined with you in your advance to heaven. Not one light in heaven but goes with you. not one ray that shines forever in the mind of God, but shines on you. Heaven is joined with you in your advance to heaven. When such great lights have joined with you to give the little spark of your desire the power of God Himself, can you remain in darkness? You and your brother, you and every other person, are coming home together after a long and meaningless journey that you undertook apart and that led nowhere. You have found your brother, and you will light each other's way. And from this light will the great rays extend back into darkness and forward onto God, to shine away the past and so make room for His eternal presence, in which everything is radiant in the light. You know, somewhere maybe about 10 years ago, just practicing these things, I would find that when I drive at night, it still happens all the time, but I see these great rays, especially when it's nighttime and there's nothing else out, no moon or anything. And you know what, when you see a searchlight, you know, going up from the ground to the sky, and it has that kind of translucent, iridescent white kind of color, and it shoots up and it kind of spans out just a little bit. But these are about 2 or 3 times the width of a normal searchlight, and they're shooting down to earth. And it's trippy and it's fun and it's exciting, and it always makes me think of that word, the great rays. And in this paragraph, he's saying those great rays are lighting your path. And I feel like the more I allow my mind to open to the truth, the holiness, the perfection of every other person, and to lay down my story and protect my thoughts, protect them from my thoughts against them, there's just more light in my mind. And that's a very real, visceral experience, are these rays, and they just come shooting down. It's kind of fun to drive at night. I love driving through the desert at night because I just see them all the time just shooting down at the earth, and it just feels so reinforcing. We are not alone. You have help. When you ask God to remind you of the truth or help you to see differently, He heard you. He said you can't take it back. There's no take backs. You can lay it down for a while or try to ignore it or not listen. It takes a little longer. It only takes once to ask, because God responds to every invitation. So it only takes once. We are going to do a guided meditation called A Vigilance for Holiness, Trust, and Faith. It's not easy in this world to be vigilant for those things. Our eyes show us so many other things. Take a moment to turn inward. It's time to relax now, giving yourself permission to let go of all of those busy thoughts, to spend time with God, feeling His love, allowing that wave of relaxing energy to flow from the top of your head all the way down to the bottoms of your feet. Wave after wave of sparkling light, like an inside shower. Breathe in deeply, relaxing your shoulders. With every beat of your heart, you are relaxing more. With every breath you take, you are feeling more calm and peaceful. Be there now, in that place of peace. Nothing to solve, nothing to fix. Leaving the past behind. I'd like for you to imagine one person that you have been judging. Imagine they are right there in front of you. And there they are. You might reflect on the times they have been most challenging. It might be their habits, their words, their behaviors. Imagine they are right there in front of you. You might be tempted to feel all of the old feelings you have felt for a while. Yet we are learning that other people are playing roles with us. They are reflecting our own thoughts and beliefs. As you observe this person and all of their habits and traits, things that annoy you, I'd like you to consider that this story about them is not the real story. Imagine, if you will, turning this person, this story about them, your judgments against them, the feelings you have in their presence or when you think of them. Try to imagine bundling all of that up and giving it to God, wanting this healing, allowing it to be healed, placing all of it in His hands. And now, as everything is clear, I want you to imagine turning around almost like you're on a stool that could swivel, and you turn around to face the truth of this being. And you are amazed instantly as you see this Holy One, not a body, perfect, radiant, tall, like an archangel, beautiful, so beautiful that it brings tears to your eyes. And they have so much love for you that it hits you like a waterfall. And you start to remember your love for them. And you are there to witness the truth of them. We are learning that what they are is eternal spirit, perfect love. They are God's angels, the ones He loves so deeply, as you are. We take this moment to choose to see the truth of them. They are free of all limitations. They are free of all of our judgments against them. They could not be more radiant, holy, innocent, pure love. If there's any remaining thoughts or images to darken their holiness or their light, we shower them off. And all of that darkness is undone. You are in the presence of God's light-filled, holy, precious child, as they are in your presence. You are one. Take a moment to breathe in their holiness. They are a blessing in your life. They are no more cause for pain, suffering, loss. They are here to bless and be blessed. Today, as we bless them with their holiness, their light, we are agreeing with God about that which they are. He says that when we do this, we are answering Him. Breathe in the peace between you and the oneness that you are. And together, where there are no gaps, no dark spots, we are willing to place our faith and our trust in our source and creator. And now this one that you have blessed is blessing you with their presence. Whatever challenges you are facing, whatever seems incomplete, whatever requires an answer that has not come, the two of you together as one, we are now asking God to light your path and guide the way. We learn in lesson 47 that if you have been trusting in your own strength, you have every reason to be anxious and fearful. You do not know these answers until they are given. How could you know the right solutions? How can you receive the guarantee that it will be accomplished if you are trying to solve it yourself? Imagine laying down all of your intentions, your actions, behaviors, and making room for the answers that will bring happiness, abundance, and peace. God is your safety in every circumstance. His voice speaks for him in all situations and in every aspect of all situations. He will tell you exactly what to do, to call upon his strength and his protection. There are no exceptions, because God has no exceptions. The voice which speaks for him thinks as he does. Today we reach past our own sense of weakness and into the source of real strength, along with our friend and witness. God is the strength in which we trust. We recognize our own frailty as a necessary step, that all of our errors would be corrected. We choose to have awareness that confidence in our real strength is fully justified in every respect, all circumstances. We choose to reach the deepest sense of peace as we let go of all trivial things that churn and bubble on the surface of our mind. And we reach down and below them into the kingdom of heaven. There is a place in us where there is perfect peace. There is a place in us where nothing is impossible. There is a place in us where the strength and the power and the love of God abides. We are remembering peace is our right, and we are giving our trust to the strength of God. Take a deep, relaxing breath. Try to imagine a life where you have no problems. Nothing is out of order. Someone says, "How are you?" And with a smile of certainty, you say, "I am perfectly fine." And you mean it. Today we welcome God's will. God's will to fill our lives, to replace our will if we had willed something else. May God's will be done. And we behold that what God has been wanting to show us, bless us with, bring to us, is the most joyful, happy manifestations of our heart. We did not know. We had decided against ourselves, but not anymore. We choose to see only light, innocence, and holiness in each and every person, regardless of their words, actions, or behaviors. We choose to see what God would have us see, to know what God would have us know, and to have the blessings that God has already given, that we have not yet received. We are one with our Creator. We have nothing to fear. We are beginning to remember who walks with us. And it is so peaceful, so happy to not have fear anymore. Thank you, Holy Spirit, that you would decide for us about everything. We will step back and let you lead the way. We are listening without agenda. If there are steps to be taken, we will know, because we are listening to only your voice. A happy outcome to all things is sure. Thank you, God, that you have not forgotten us. Thank you, God, that we have asked you to guide us, and you are, and you will. Thank you, God, that we can be confident in the happiness of everything that is coming our way, because our guide is perfect. A happy outcome to all things is sure. Amen. Let's bring your awareness back into this room. As I count from 1 to 5, and when I reach 5, you will feel a velvety sense of peace that stays with you as you go. You will feel happy and blessed, and you will feel God's love around you in everything you do. 1, 2, getting ready to come back now. 3, 4, wiggling your fingers and toes, and 5, opening your eyes to the happy life that is waiting for you. We have no decisions against it. No decisions against ourselves. No decisions against anyone else. No decisions against our God. And a happy outcome is sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to step into the Miracle Cafe. If anyone has any questions or thoughts or prayer requests, feel free to join me. Remember to expect miracles. Remember, if you ask God for answers and guidance, He will answer you. No more deciding against Him. And I will see you next time. God bless you. I love you. Bye-bye.